Hi everyone. I don't know if you're as warm as I am, or as at the moment airless as I am, because I've just had to shut the window to make sure that any road noise isn't heard. So if the temperature starts to go up and you start to see sweat on my brow, it's not that you're worrying me or asking difficult questions. It's just because it's warm. However, let's hopefully you're gonna have lots of questions about pricing. And I know pricing is a really difficult subject for many small businesses, quite difficult for some of the larger businesses I've run as well. But pricing is absolutely critical to one of the most important components of your business. Let me just give you a little bit of an introduction on me before we get too far into this so that you know roughly where we're coming from on this. You'll see on much of my slides, I talk about the scientific value building machine. And because I'm passionate about trying to help people actually do that. That's build value through mechanisms in their business. And the reason I call myself the scientific value builder is because I was a scientist many, many years, and probably kilograms ago now, according to this photograph, I was a working scientist. And I built some businesses that I then proceeded to build after my scientific career, basically using the principles that I gathered as a scientist. And those principles are largely that you've got to have repeatable systems in place in order to be able to generate both leads and new products and profit. And that systems, those processes are absolutely critical, that you are constantly experimenting and evolving and trying new things, because the world does not stay the same. It changes. Even once you think you know what you're doing, you have to move on and try new things. Otherwise, your business stagnates. So I've been involved in helping mentor people through these sort of things now, and for about 12, 15 years. And the machine, if you like, that runs your business consists of these 5 things. Now, in previous masterclasses, I've sort of talked about this bit of it, which is the lead flow element. And the lead flow is really important, and I will touch on that a little bit today. But actually, the really critical thing that we're talking about today is this one. It's about the profit. It's about how do you maximize that profit and generate the wealth that you need, the value you need in your business in order for it to be sustainable. Okay, so let's move on from the nice spinny slides and move on to what we're actually going to deal with today, which is that we need to think a little bit, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about this, certain elements that are absolutely critical in your business. Now, I've done this in my previous masterclasses, so if you've seen this before, my apologies, but it is important. We'll come back to it. There are 10 elements that are critical, particularly to generating leads in your business, but they are equally important to helping you position yourself and get your maximal price in your product or service. Now, those 10 elements I'm going to show here, these are what I call my marketing elements, and these are what I call the sales elements. And the marketing elements are everything from understanding who your perfect client for your products or service is, through to, when it comes to selling, having a really effective call to action. Now, you'll find, and I don't know if Alice will be sending this out, but I've talked about these in a lot more detail, but I'm just bringing them to your attention now, because we're going to talk about some of these as part of your pricing strategy. So things like your perfect client, knowing who your perfect client is, having that client persona perfectly worked out. Things like your differentiator. What is different about you compared with your competitors? Why is it that you perhaps charge a higher price? And we're going to get onto that in some detail. What is the social proof, i.e. what is it your customers have said before about what it is that you charge? And you've got to remember that most people will bitch about the quality of your product long after they've finished bitching about the price. And that means that people in your past, your previous customers, are likely to now be saying, I really appreciated the value that this product brought to me. And value is a big thing about this. And then things that, like focusing your customers' attention on the benefits it brings to them, which is this element here, the features in, oops, sorry, you got onto the next one far too early. So the features and benefits, whoa, we've gone all the way to the end. Alice, I'm just going to have to slow down and stop a second and go back to the beginning because you've got far too much there. Understanding, just pull that back up. Can you all see the screen again? I hope you can.
That looks good.
Okay, so when I'm talking about benefits, I'm talking about the way that you explain, because you understand your client, your customer so perfectly, you explain to them how the product you've got benefits them more than another product from a competitor, say. Now, hopefully all of that is fairly clear. If it's not, you'll need to go back and have a look at my previous masterclass. But what I'm about to do is show how that which you use, those elements that you use to generate your lead, are so important. After you've got your lead into your lead funnel and they've got to the point at which they're going to buy, it helps them to understand why the price that you are going to charge them for your product or service is the way it is. And price is based upon this. It's what I call the value stick. The value stick consists of, as you can see here, 4 elements. Willingness to pay. That's at the top left, if you like. The willingness to pay is all about how much the highest price your customer is willing to pay for your product or service. They're more likely to make the purchase when you hit the very edge of that threshold. If you go even a penny above it, you will see it damages your profit margins because people will start to question. So what I'm going to be talking to you about is how do we stretch that element of the value stick, that willingness to pay. The next thing down is the price. Now, that's the final price that the company charges when it sells the product or service. It's the point on the value stick, if you like, where what is going on here is all about how do you balance the costs associated with creating it and how much you think you should sell it for, what's known as the margin. Okay, so price in this element is all about margin. That means you have to understand how much it costs you to do something. Now, cost is a very big subject and you'll need to sort of understand exactly how you do it, but it is not just necessarily the amount of stuff that you put into a product, but it also includes things like how much does it cost for you to do it? Remember, as a small business owner, the first person that you need to think about paying is you. Because if you're not being paid, you're unlikely to be able to sustain a business. If you're not bothering to take value out of the business and pay yourself, you will eventually find it is impossible to keep the business going. So you have to factor in your time, and your time consists of not only how much time it takes you to deliver your product, but also creating the product and the prices associated, the costs associated with creating that product, but also things like how much time are you going to have to put into thinking about the next product or service you're going to buy, because you can't have just one, you need more. So the price here has to include costs associated with new product development. Okay, the next thing, as we've just got into it, cost. What are those costs that are actually in the product development? So you've got the product itself, maybe your telephone, maybe your internet connection, your laptop and the replacement for your laptop. How many times are you going to need to do that? Do you have premises? Do you have a place that you have to go and work? And if you don't need a place to go and work, if you're going to go and work in a coffee shop, how many coffees are you going to need in order to be able to keep yourself going? All of those things are part of your costs, and all of that you need to understand, and you need to know that to the penny so that you can work out the price that you sell it. And then from that, you can start to understand how you stretch to the willingness to pay. Now, the lowest price at which you can supply, your suppliers are going to come in with their inputs to your product or service, are what we call the willingness to sell. Okay, the willingness to sell represents the absolute lowest point before it drops below a point at which you cannot make a sale profitably. So if it costs so much to buy in products, and you'll hear the phrase used by many businesses, loss leader. This is the point at which they have dropped below the willingness to sell, and they have decided to sell below that line in order to be able to attract a customer. You cannot have all of your products on sale at below the point of willingness to sell, and you can't do it for long because you will run out of money. The willingness to sell is the bottom of the value stick, and it's the point at which everything that you bring into your business, it can't be changed, is fixed. And at that point, if you're selling below the point at which all of those figures are added up, your willingness to sell means you are going to go bust. Okay, so that's the value stick, and we'll come back to that. So let's go back to what are those key factors in that pricing. The first of which of these is your costs. Now, how do you go about calculating your costs? Well, you calculate your costs by adding it all up, keep it on a spreadsheet, make sure that you've included everything. But what about then, okay, you've got your costs. What about that margin? How do you conduct and think about what that margin should be? Well, you can do a formula. You can basically turn around and say, well, I want it to be 10 pence more, 20 pence more, £10 more. But what about doing some market research? Going around your competitors. Look to see what your competitors are charging. Now, do you want to be more expensive than them or less expensive than them? Do you want to go out and say, well, if they're charging that much, what is it about their product or service which I can compare and use as a benchmark for myself? Then we come to the value proposition, the positioning. This is where we come into the really key thing, which starts that next bar in the value stick, which is how do I start to position my product or service so that I can maximize the willingness to pay? Maybe you've got a very unique product. Maybe it's premium. Now, we go back here to my 10 elements. How do we know that this is a premium or value proposition which a customer truly values? The key of that is really because we have done it again. We have an understanding of our perfect customer here. We have an understanding of what their needs are, and we can demonstrate that our product, because we understand it very well and we've differentiated it in their mind, we have understood exactly what they're looking for, and we therefore can position the value of our product or service to that customer. I often say to people that one of the things that we forget as business owners is the fact that we have an understanding of our customer's problem, and we have a solution to their problem. Now, if you have a customer that has a particular problem and you understand how much it's costing them for that problem to continue to exist, if you reach out to them and say, would you like the solution to your problem? Would you like me to help you solve the problem? They will inevitably, 90% of the time, say yes. Now, if this problem is costing them £50 a week, you can ask them for 45 because they make a £5 saving by asking. Now, it doesn't matter if your product for their problem costs you £5 or 50 pence to produce. You know the value to them because you understand their problem better than they do, and you can demonstrate it. So by understanding that and differentiate it in their mind, you can ask them for moving up into that willingness to pay. You can ask them for a greater amount because you know and can explain to them exactly how much their problem is. And that all comes from actually understanding your customer well. It also comes from being able to explain the benefit to them. For instance, as I just said, I am going to demonstrate to you the problem that you've got is costing you this much. It's costing you £50 a week. I know that it costs you £50 a week, and I can demonstrate it to you. I'm now going to give you this problem solution for 45, and I can demonstrate it will solve your problem. I'm not going to tell you about the features of the solution. I'm not going to tell you it's made of metal or it's made of plastic or whatever it is. I'm telling you the benefit to your business is that it solves this problem, and it solves it perfectly. So therefore, whatever price I ask for it, you're almost bound to say, I want it, because you've demonstrated that. And that all comes from explaining to your customer during the lead generation and as you are communicating with them, the benefit that your solution has to their business. It also comes down to your social proof. Getting your previous customers to say on your website, in your marketing, this solution was brilliant. It solved this problem and I have never looked back. That helps to position your solution to their problems so that they look at it and go, I've got to have what they've got. I've got to have it because it's the only way I'll get out of this problem. And that helps to increase the value of your solution, your problem or your product. Finally, the next thing that I just want to talk to you a little bit about is psychological pricing and what I call elasticity. So we've all seen and done it. There's something called psychological pricing, and that's by using this 99 thing. Nobody ever asks for £10. It's a strategy to always position it slightly below and use 99. And it's related to a concept that's called anchoring. And I'm just going to sort of talk to you a little bit about anchoring at the moment. Anchoring is something that you can see done quite a lot, and Apple did it brilliantly when they first brought out the iPad. When Steve Jobs stood up on the stage and started describing the iPad, he basically announced it, and he told the analysts, or he told the crowd there, that analysts had said it would sell for $999. He hadn't even announced the product at this stage. He hadn't even really described the product at this stage. He said, we've got this new product. It's called the iPad. Analysts have told me that it will sell for $999. Now, that is an anchor now in the crowd's mind. They've heard 999. He put it on a big screen and he just let it sit there while he continued talking about what the product would contain, about what it would do for people. He explained how it would benefit from their lives. And then when it came to the price, he said, it's not going to be $999. It's only going to be $499. Now, the genius of that is you immediately think, when you hear all of that, my goodness, I've just saved $500. You hadn't saved anything. You hadn't bought anything. You hadn't done anything at this stage. He had positioned and anchored you to believe that you were going to pay $999, and then he brought in $499, and your immediate thought was, my goodness, what a good deal. I've got to have it. Now, any of us who've been through the process of buying a house will realize that you've got to haggle, because if you don't haggle, somebody somewhere is going to think you didn't get a good deal. So one of the things you have to do to stretch the willingness to pay, demonstrate value, ensure people understand the value, but never ever give them the right price at the first call of asking. You have to have some elasticity. You have to have some way of anchoring them high and bringing them down. So you'll often see this on websites: discount 30%, limited time. The limited time, and I will just go back to this, the limited time, the limited time is part of what I call the irresistible offer. Your limited time has to be part of your irresistible offer. You have to basically say to somebody, this offer is going to disappear. So you're anchoring them on two things. I've just given you a discount, and that discount is going away. You're motivating them to buy. So your psychological pricing, your psychological elasticity involves letting people think they're going to get a deal from you by giving them a price higher than you're going to charge, and then taking away the discount before you actually sell it to them. So let's go back. The value stick, we've got through this. All of this, all that I'm telling to you now, all we're discussing at the moment now, we're basically trying to use this to stretch this willingness to pay as far as we can. And we do it by using value statements. So what is it about value statements that we've got? The fact that the value statements are about ensuring that people understand the perceived values, the quality, the uniqueness. Going back to my 10 elements, the quality and uniqueness are part of your benefits to them. The emotional value, how does it meet their need? Well, you can only possibly tell them how it meets their need if you've done your research and you understand your customer better than they understand themselves. And that's about the perfect client avatar, the first element of the marketing elements. How do you go about understanding them better than they understand themselves, so that you can understand and put it to them in their emotional language to explain it to them? It's also about the irresistible offer having some scarcity. Now, if you have very few alternatives, there's only one of something, its value is often described as priceless, because there's only the one thing. There's only one Mona Lisa. It's described as priceless. Now, you might not like the Mona Lisa, but somebody wants it, and so therefore it becomes priceless. So scarcity value, and explaining that it's scarce and only you can deliver to their exact need, once again, is about understanding your customer absolutely. Just want to come now to a lot of what I'm about to say in the next couple of slides are about those people who are offering services rather than product. What we've just discussed are sort of product related, but this is fairly specific to service related stuff. And it's something that I spend a lot of time. I do work with people that are running service-based companies. The reason that we're talking about price today is because a number of them don't charge the true price that they can charge. They don't charge and push the willingness to pay. And one of the reasons is that they're not really pushing higher value work with their clients. Now, there are three ways that I think that you can actually deliver higher price and therefore higher value work to your clients. The first is to tailor the offering. So having understood who your perfect client is, you understand exactly their need, and therefore you can tailor your offering to them. And you do that partly by offering insights when you discuss and meet with them. You offer insights to explain their problem, and you explain how you understand their problem better than anybody else by offering them an insight that they haven't yet got. I remember reading an interview with Karen Brady, who works with Alan Sugar. And one of the things she said is when she interviews somebody for a job, the person that tells her something she didn't know gets the position. It doesn't matter what everybody else says. Offering that insight to your customer, telling them something they didn't know themselves, is an excellent way of tailoring your offering and showing how you understand them, and therefore you can charge more than anybody else because you are tailoring your offering, which is absolutely perfect for them. Now, it also means occasionally challenging them. It also means saying something like, well, you think that that's the problem, but it's not, it's this. So you have to be prepared to do that. And that has to move you from the role of servant into partner by challenging them and being prepared to offer them that insight in the way that a partner would rather than a servant would. And that's a difficult mental shift for a number of the customers that I work with. One of the other ways that you can increase the value for your work and increase your revenue is to just work with better clients. I hate to say it like this, but I do know a number of people who work with clients who say to me things like, they don't pay well, they don't actually pay on time, they're difficult, they make my life difficult, and I always think the project's going to take this long, and it ends up taking this long, and I can't get more out of them. And my answer is, sack them as a client. And they always look at me as if, well, I can't do that. They're a customer. And I went, no, they're not. They're now a difficult problem. And the way that we deal with difficult problems is we actually turn around and say, I'm sorry, we can't work together anymore. I now need to move on. And the other way that I would say to really raise the willingness to pay, to increase that revenue that you bring in and the price that you charge to your customer, is to change your position from that position of being a servant into a position of being a partner. Bring them those fresh perspectives and get them to recognize the increased respect that they have for your judgment. So being prepared to come back and not just do what you're told or do what you've been asked to do, but actually come back to them and give them opportunities to see you demonstrating something in a different way. Let me give you some examples of all of these. We're going to go on to talk about these, if you like, about the difference between content and context in professional services. So, for instance, if you're a web designer, how can you drive greater work? Well, in the content mode, as in the servant type mode, you are being asked to produce some work. But in the context, you can go back to them and say, what is it about this which is going to drive greater revenue from your business? And once you've got that and you can offer insights into that, you can charge more for the website because you've demonstrated the website will meet their needs better than anybody else. In coaching, a lot of people are talking about their methodology. Now, their methodology misses the number 6 on the marketing element. If you can't remember it, go back in the video and you'll see it. It's the features and benefits. What they're not doing is they're talking about the methodology, the feature of the way in which the coaching works. And that's not what the customer is particularly interested in. What the customer is interested in is the fact that it delivers long-term benefits. So it might be that your methodology actually delivers more benefit, longer and longer lasting, and it produces better results for them. So talk about that when you're in the process of selling to them, and then tell them why you're going to be charging more than anybody else, because they won't need to come back for further coaching. The longer term benefits is an investment. Let's talk about one of the things I did with a legal company that wanted to talk about all of the, once again, those features they put into their contracts. And they said their contracts were better than anybody else's. And I said, why are they better than anybody else's? Put it to me in better terms and better. And the reason they said was because they mitigated risk better than anybody else. So let's give you some examples of how you can do this with your clients and business at the moment. Trying to ask questions like this. What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's adjacent to this problem? What's the purpose? Well, why do you want to get to that answer? When you have that answer, what will it give you? And then what will that do for you? And why would that be better than another result? Who's it for? Who's asking for it? Who else in your organization is trying to solve this problem? Perhaps we can find a way of raising the value by selling the solution twice to a business when only one department wanted it. Now they recognize they can be a hero by selling it to a different department. What do we already know about what you've tried to done to solve this problem? Talk to them about things like co-creating new insights with them. Trusted advisors are very good at this. They co-create this. And then try reframing those questions. Try asking it very simply to say what it is you've been told when you're hearing those answers, playing it back to them and answering them with, so what I've heard is this. That way you're telling your customer that you've heard what they've said, they've understood what you've been told. And then when you explain how your solution fits within their reframed problem, they're able to see that the value is greater than other people offer. Okay, I've kind of wound down to what I wanted to say today, because I like, Alice has always said, give time for questions. So I've given 25 minutes for questions because they often come up. Hopefully what you've seen is that your price is not just fixed by how much you can get out, but it is much more determined by you demonstrating value behind your proposition. And that value can only come if you've done a couple of things, and I'll go back to them now, which is to truly understand who your customer is. I'm trying to do this with my pen and it's really not helping me very much. Truly understand who your customer is, to truly understand how you differentiate yourself from other competitors and what is unique about you, to focus very much on the benefit that your product or service has to your customer that you have understood, to ensure that you build in some scarcity, you explain why it's scarce, why it is you don't repeat this for everybody, because it's a highly tailored, valuable solution which is specific to them, and also to demonstrate that you have got other people that recognize the value you've brought to their lives, and that they will be continuing to say what a valuable service, product, or whatever you provided to them was, long after they've finished thinking about the price that they paid for it. Alice, I'm ready to try and answer as many questions as I can based upon the last 35 minutes of what I've been talking about.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stuart. So guys, please do pop any questions that you have in the chat. First of all, a couple of you have been messaging me just about slides and the replay. Great questions. So we don't send out slides just because we have the recording where you have the whole screen and you can see all of the slides and everything. If you are already in the Digital Boost community, the replay will be on your Digital Boost dashboard. If you are not in the community yet, that is not a problem. Just send me a message. I can help you get your account set up and then we can send you the replay. But if you are in the community, you don't need to do anything. It will be automatically uploaded to your dashboard. Now on to the questions. So I saw Lydia with a question asking about memberships. I think this is a really interesting one to dive into. Spoken to a couple of you guys recently in our community who are building memberships. It's a really exciting business to be building. Do you have any advice on whether this kind of how the pricing strategy can relate to memberships?
Yes. I mean, without wanting to get boring, memberships are all about this again. It's all about what is it you understand about them better than anybody else, and how the community you build delivers value in those situations. The other thing which we haven't really touched on in this particular question is reasons why it's particularly important for your members. They need to understand why you, as opposed to why somebody else, because there are other communities out there. So what you need to do is to explain to them. Now that's related to the differentiator. It's to explain to why it's different. But the reason that you have to give them is this is something which is going to solve many more problems than just the one. So let's take a particularly silly example, if you like. If you want to build a coaching practice with people, the reason why you want them to be involved in it is because you're not only going to help them to solve a problem, but others within the community that have already been through the process will also be there to provide you with greater value, because they're going to explain to you exactly how they've applied it. And that's going to be far better for you than just hearing from me as the coach. So it is very much about making sure that the people you've got in your community fit very nicely within this, because otherwise what will happen is that you can't charge a high value, because the reason why won't work very well, because you'll get people who are going, well, it didn't work for me, and that's going to devalue your offering. So making sure that you've got perfectly targeted clients or perfect clients within your membership actually enhances your value rather than detracts from it.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. That's fantastic. Thank you, Stuart. And please do come and chat to us as you are building your membership. We would love to do a deeper dive on that pricing strategy with you, because we love membership businesses. I do particularly. So please do come and have a little chat with us. I will pop all of the links in the chat in just a second. And thank you all for your questions. I can see them all coming in. So we will do our best to get through all of them. But what we will say is if there's any we can't answer or any that we want to do a deeper dive on, we will send you mentoring links, so don't worry. Quick one from Becca, which is about Digital Boost. Can Digital Boost offer advice or feedback on things like adverts, messaging, social media posts that we've created where we're trying to get all this information across? Absolutely. As a mentor myself, and I'm sure Stuart will agree, it is really helpful when you guys come to mentoring sessions, and we love to talk through things, but we also love to see what you are working on, things that you've posted, things you might be posting, different messaging. We love to see that in the flesh, because we can give you advice and kind of help you to tweak it in the moment. So absolutely come along with examples and real life things to your mentoring sessions. You can do things like screen sharing and things like that, so we can really, really help you there. So great question, Becca. Thank you. Anastasia says, Stuart, do you have any thoughts on being transparent about your prices if you're a consultant or a service provider? For example, including consulting packages with prices, you know, something like starting from.
So yes, I do have thoughts on this. And the fact is, I've built two consulting businesses now, and we did it very transparently. And the reason we did it transparently was two things. One of which is we were very clear about what we were different and how we were different. We were very much building with our clients, but we spent a lot of time on this bit. We spent a lot of time on the benefits. And so therefore, when I came to them and said, you know, this solution, sort of talked a little bit about this solution is going to absolutely perfectly do this. I'm just going to tell you it's this much. Now we can dive into why, but I'm going to tell you about the thing it's going to do for your business. I'm going to tell you about the benefit you get from it, so much so that you're going to forget what I'm talking about how I've built the price for this. And despite the fact I was able to sort of talk to them about the price, and they turn around and say, that's fair enough, I just want this. I just want the solution to work for me. So I really don't care what you charge me. I do, however, know. So I was talking to them about what it's going to do for them. And that way you can be very transparent, because all that you're talking about is them and not you. And so therefore, being focused on them and saying, I just want to solve your problem and I'm going to solve it, and this is the value you're going to get from it, is much more powerful than saying these are my costs and this is how much it's going to cost me, and therefore this is how much I'm going to charge you, because that's about you. Focus on them absolutely every time. There is a very interesting question whilst you're there, Alice, just making some notes, and I've just seen what Paul's put. Paul, you've asked about the street food and the round price. I'd agree with you about round pricing in the days when you were when everything was cash. But nowadays, more people are electronic than they are cash, and it's so much easier to go for the $9.99 than the $9.95, because it's just a series of numbers on a pad. And so therefore you can start to do the 99 thing much easier than you could do before. If it's cash, you were having to sort of fiddle around with a penny to give back to them. So in the approach that people want to go with the cash, the easy thing I always do is to say, you have a small jar on the side and go, pay us 10 quid, we'll put the penny into the charity box. And then you just give that penny after a while to the charity. But nowadays with digital, everybody's waving cards on phones and what have you and paying like that. It's easier to do the 99 or the 95 for your street food, because people are less fussy about trying to pull out a £5 or a £10 or £20 to hand it over. And so I've seen a number of people that are in the restaurant business are much more keen now to go onto the 99 thing. The other thing to do about food, which is a really specific thing, and it's something which is strange about food, there are two things. On your menus, the thing which you want to bring people's attention to most, put a box around it. I don't know why, but if you put a box around something on a menu, you're 30% more likely to sell that particular item. It's just psychological again. It's just that attention thing. So put a box around the thing that you're most keen for them to sell, the thing that's got the highest margin or whatever, and you'll find that people will buy that 30% more often. The other thing is, don't put any sort of units in front of it. People don't like to be reminded of units. Just put $9.99. They'll know it's $9.99, but they'll be much less happy to spend money on something which is pounds $9.99 than they are on $9.99, despite the fact it's the same thing. It's once again back to this value thing. They forget that they're spending money. They just want to buy the item. I don't know, and I don't understand it. I'm not going to try and get into human beings. My science at the time that I was doing was with human beings, but it was on bits of their DNA. But for whatever reason, when you're in the restaurant business, don't put the pound sign. Just put the price, $9.99. People will know it's pounds because you're in London or whatever. But it makes them happier to spend $9.99 than £9.99. You tell me. But anyway, put a box around things. Start putting boxes around. Don't put multiple boxes, because that will confuse them. One or two boxes will draw the eye to those things that you want them to focus on. Sorry, Alice, that was me going off on one.
No, I couldn't type fast enough. So thank you, Stuart.
You'll have to look at the recording. You'll have to look at the recording.
Exactly. Radislaw has a great question, which I definitely want us to answer, because I think a lot of people will be thinking along these lines, which is, what is the profit margin I should be keeping, and what percentage of that should be dedicated back to marketing? Percentage for retraining of staff? So quite a lot to unpick there.
Okay, right. So the way that I did this, I would put 20 into marketing. I would, so that takes me down to, so that's 80. I would then put 15 back into retraining. That took me to 65. So that was my benchmark, is I've got to retain 65 in order to be able to have a healthy profit margin. But 15 of that I would put into training my staff, and 20 I would put into marketing. The 65 then coped with all of my overheads and things like that. So marketing, the way that you have to split that up is, I'm sorry to have to say, it's largely a test. It's going to be very difficult to have a sort of, what works for everybody. But for the most part now, most people are putting, of that 20%, they're probably putting 18 to 19 into things like Google Ads. I would suggest that you probably need to put probably a lot more than that into some of the more traditional ways of doing it. Digital marketing is still quite effective. SEO is becoming a bit less effective. There are some good ways of getting around that, but SEO is beginning to drop off a little bit because we're all getting to the stage where it's quite crowded. More traditional routes of marketing now, telemarketing, paper-based marketing, things like letters are incredibly effective. I'm having some real success with one customer now that's just doing really good letter drops and telemarketing on the back of them. You wouldn't believe how effective they are. So don't put all of your eggs into one basket and expect that your SEO and digital marketing will work. Be balanced. On the training, the important thing to remember about training and things like that, yes, buy courses, but for goodness sake, don't buy courses and then do not allow people to go and stretch and practice those skills. I've often found that the best way in order to be able to sort of do that is to give somebody the job to do first. And once they've realized how difficult it is, there's some psychology behind this as well, then offer them training in order to improve their skills upon what they've already tried themselves.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. It's really helpful to have that breakdown as well, because I think we're always kind of looking for those numbers and kind of rough guides. So hopefully that helps you guys. Caitlin has another fantastic one, which I think is going to be really relevant for everyone here. So Caitlin has said, is there a good practice on how often to do offers and how to build them into your pricing strategy? And they're thinking particularly from a product business point of view.
Yeah, so my advice to you is to always have an offer, but change that offer on a fairly regular basis. Because one of the things you'll do is you'll say something along the lines of, this is a limited time offer. And if it's never, ever changing, people will become wise to the fact that this limited time is forever, and that's bad. So yes, have offers, but truly make them offers that actually change. But there should always be something on offer. And the other reason that you want to have something always on offer is because you want to be running a newsletter or something similar once a month, and you must let your customers know that this month's offer is, and so therefore you keep in touch with them. So constantly have something to go back to them and say, this month's offer is such and such. And if you've done your customer segmentation, your perfect client avatar well, you'll know that the people that you're trying to reach with that and telling them about it will effectively start to drive up your sales.
Thank you. I'm trying to whip through these questions because we've got lots to get through, so I'm desperately looking at the chat. So Rashmi has got a question very specific to them and their nutrition business. Rashmi, if you don't mind, what I'm going to say is we would love to book you a one-to-one so we can give you really bespoke advice on the nutrition side of things. But I just wanted to pull out the theme of your question, because again, I think it's really relevant for everyone, which is, how do you find out what other people are charging for similar services so that you can benchmark your own prices?
Ask them. You can do mystery shopping things. You can ring them up and ask. When it comes to some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, and I did see somebody had asked the question, has a child scribbled on the screen? The answer is pretty much yes, it's me, I'm the child. But let me just get back to one of the things I was talking about earlier, which is when I sort of talked about here, market research, I go and ask my customers what they pay for things. I go and ask my competitors what they charge things. You'd be amazed that if you see somebody who is in a similar business to you, and we were talking about transparency, if you're prepared to trade something with them, I'll tell you about this problem I've got if you'll tell me about this. You'd be amazed at the number of even your competitors that will turn around and go, yeah, great, whatever. I have had some very in-depth and formed joint ventures with people who I never thought would work with me, because I went to them and said, I've got this problem about how much I'm going to charge for this. It's not something you quite do, but what would you advise? And get them to actually talk me through it. And you'd be amazed at the amount of information that comes out of that. Now, some won't, but I drove a number of joint ventures by just doing that. Sorry, so that was one question about, was that it, Alice? I've forgotten the rest of the question because I got sidetracked.
No, that's perfect. And actually it leads really nicely into a question that Adam has. And I think, Jacqueline, this might answer your question as well about knowing how much to price your services, because Adam has a question about whether you have any advice on how you get to know your customers better than themselves, which obviously then informs the pricing strategy.
Yeah, once again, so how do I do that? One, it starts with basic research. It starts with going out and doing that, talk to them, ask them, start to have conversations with people who are in a similar field. Just go out and say something along the lines of, I'm not trying to sell you something, I really just want to get to grips with the problem I'm struggling with, about how I help you to do such and such. At one stage, when I first started one of my businesses, I reached out to something like 5 people a day and said, I'm just trying to help customers with this. I'm not asking for any money for it. I'm just in the process of trying to build some knowledge. Could I have a conversation with you? 90% of the time, one of those conversations led to a customer. So there is nothing wrong with basically saying, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but be aware that you are probably going to have insight because you've spoken to somebody yesterday that's got a similar problem. So that positions you as an expert. So just asking questions. The other thing that's really valuable nowadays, polls and sending out questionnaires. Now, questionnaire tends to be one of those things which doesn't get great response rates, but if you wrap it around with what is effectively some almost like training. So if you go out and say, we understand people like you have this sort of problem, and you're giving an insight in the question, educating them on the fact that you understand, and then ask the question on the back of it, would a service that does such and such help you? Yes, no. You'd be amazed that gets a much greater response rate than just, would a service like this help you? You have to position your question with, I understand what your problems might be. Let me try and sort of frame it. Now, every time you do one of those, you have to learn from it and say, okay, did we get better? Did we actually position it well? Did we ask the right question? Did we demonstrate our knowledge? And you just build that knowledge up over time.
Fantastic. And there was another question which I am just trying to find. Oh, I really want to get this one answered. Because Ian, I think this is a really fascinating question. So, and again, Ian, it might be one we take to a one-to-one mentoring session, because it sounds like you might be working on something really, really cool. But Ian has asked if there are any tips for raising marketing pricing in a sector to disrupt an established rate beyond being a differentiator. So it's quite an interesting one, that one.
So once again, I'm just going to go back to my slides and point something out. When it comes to this, I use this bit of my 10 elements, Ian, and that's the benefits. If I understand the benefit better, I can push the price up because I am being specific to what they need better than other people. So it does rely upon understanding the customer, but it's all about moving away from the features of what you're doing to the benefit which actually drives longer term value. Does that make sense? It's a quick answer to quite a complicated question, but if you focus on how does it move their business forward better than anybody else, and you can demonstrate that by saying, such and such has already done this. This is going to suit your business for the next 20 years. people will look at it and go, I want that.
That is really helpful, thank you. And I threw quite a difficult question at you there, so thank you, Stuart. I thought it'd be really interesting for us to see, because I think lots of you will.
I think actually, it's Alice, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. It's the one thing that all of us do too little of, both for our lead generation and our pricing. We focus less on the benefits than we should. If there's one thing you can do to change your business today, it's talk to customers about the benefits, not the features. Talk to them about what it is that they will get from working with you, not what you get or what you do. Talk to them about what they get by being involved with you. So, I will do this, I will change it. If you look at my LinkedIn profile, the first things I put up on there are basically, my customers call me when they want this result. And that's how I position myself in the business that I'm running, is I talk to my customers when they want this result. If they want this, I'll supply it. Do more of that. If it's the one thing that will change your prices, change your lead generation, change your profitability, it's all about demonstrating what you understand about them more than, talking about yourself. People in their websites, what have you, talk all about, our founder did this, I did. Customers don't care. They want to know what's going to happen at the end of this. Am I going to be better off or worse off? Are you going to turn around and make me richer or poorer? So tell them how you're going to make them richer.